Hello, Eastview Scholars, and welcome from Normal, Illinois in the Sweet Corn Blues Festival. All those people you see behind me are buying the greatest sweet corn you've ever had out of the farm fields of Illinois. There's a lot of blues, there's a lot of music, and it's a great time. Whenever I see this sea of humanity and I see all this delicious corn and the nutrients and everything else, I start thinking science. So we're going to talk some science, but right now I'm going to go catch some tunes at the Blues Fest. So here you can see what we're looking at. We got a nice stage, we got a nice festival, we got all this flora and this fauna and stuff, and all these people enjoying corn and good music. This is anatomy right here, folks. This is senses. This is, look at the active kids using their muscular and skeletal systems. You can't go wrong with this right here. Look at all the nutrients people are bringing into their digestive system. It's a great day.
How we doing, Eastview Scholars? Welcome to Anatomy and Physiology. This is your introductory video that's going to give you an idea of what the heck's going on in this class. As far as terminology and stuff to know, basic chapter 1, where do I start with anatomy and physiology? And really, to start with, we really need to separate and define the two, because there are often times you might find they're taught separately. Anatomy really is talking about the form. Okay, all these structures, here's an arm, all the structures, the humerus, the muscles, the radius and the ulna, how this articulation hinge joint works with the end of the humerus here, and how it fits in, the heart, the cardiovascular system, the heart, the vessels, etc. Any pick a system, and that is the basic memorization. What are the things that are in that system? The physiology portion, which often is a little more difficult for students to grasp or at least explain well, is then the function. Okay. What is the interaction of all these things? Yes, these are the parts that put it together, but then in order to do this function, in order for that arm to bend, to curl, I had to have an interaction between the muscular system, the skeletal system, the nervous system would be in there either with a voluntary, involuntary response. There could be any other number of other things going on there also, depending on what it is. So that is really the difference, is that anatomy is looking at the structures, physiology is looking at the function. This is also a great time to mention one of the two real big points to always have in the back of your head as you study stuff. It may or may not help you to understand the physiology better and where is everything coming from. The first one, and again, this is a good statement to still have up there, is what's called the principle of complementarity, which basically says the form of a structure follows its function, or the function is a result of its form, vice versa, this and that, however you want to say it. But really what it is getting to the point is, as we became more complex, multicellular beings, as living things became more complex, and they had to specialize, and they had to have specialized cells and tissues and organs and organ systems and stuff as they grew and fought and changed and adapted. How, even at the basic atomic level, how that function was derived or how that function was needed to allow that animal to survive was developed with the form that that organ came out in. Or in other words, I need to do this function, I need to develop a way with the myriad of proteins and stuff, or new proteins or something, I need to build a structure, anatomy, that is going to allow me to perform a function and continue to survive as a living being. You could look at it the other way, you know. I'm going to build this structure to perform a function. However you want to look at it, you know, however you want to say it, the idea is that we became complex in an ability to adapt and respond to our environment. Okay. That gets us to what does it take to be a living being? Now, we're studying human anatomy, but this is true for everything, and it's good, again, to look at these and think of the organ systems. You should have a basic knowledge when you're done with this chapter of what each organ system is and what it does. And one of those things with principle of complementarity is to look at what does it take to be a living being. You have to respond to your environment and the changes both internally and externally with multicellular organisms. You have to adapt to your surroundings and change to survive. You have to grow. I often put these separate, but you have to grow. Growth just doesn't mean getting taller. It also means the rejuvenation of cells and stuff. You have to reproduce viable offspring, or you're not going to be a living organism for very long. You have to move. Now, your book uses circulation. To me, circulation is a form of movement. To me, movement is not just moving across or plants bending towards the sun or things like that. It's the movement of the nutrients and the materials throughout your body also. You have to have some sort of respiration, or in other words, working with oxygen, which is next to water. Oxygen is what we need to drive all our metabolic reactions. You have to be able to consume some sort of fuel, break it down, and obtain energy from it. That's digestion. And of course, in doing so and obtaining the nutrients you need and providing that energy, you'll provide waste. You'll develop waste products which need to be excreted. And that's characteristics of all living organisms. Now think about a virus. What does a virus hit in this, and what doesn't a virus hit, which leads to the age-old argument of are viruses living things. You'll probably come to the best estimation that no, they are not, even though they hit some of these characteristics. Okay. The other thing with the principle of complementarity that may help you as we go through our systemic look at anatomy is to constantly think not just at the organism level, but really start at the chemical level. Okay. If I want to understand this structure, and I don't want to get all too confused when I'm trying to figure out tissue layers and how did it develop, and you know, how does it provide this function, how do the proteins work in this, how do the carbohydrates, how does all of this stuff come together to provide a function for that system, think principle of complementarity and start at the atomic level. This is the most basic level, and this is where adaptations and stuff will start, with changes in proteins and possible changes in DNA, etc. But then you start at the atomic level, which is the most basic functional unit of matter. Then those atoms form molecules. Those molecules come together, and for living beings, the basic functional unit for living organisms is the cellular level. Again, this is for matter. This is for living organisms. That is our basic functional unit, is the cell. Of course, as we became more complex, we developed different types of cells, and those cells would come together to perform a function, and they would form tissues. Okay, those tissues then, at that level, would then, in order to create an organ, different tissues would work together for a function. Again, see how function keeps coming out of here. And you would create an organ, and then those organs would need to work together for some function, and that would be the organ system level, and all those organ systems then create an organism. So when you are trying to figure out how something works, go through the hierarchy. Okay. The other key concept to talk about is homeostasis. And homeostasis, people like to use the word balance. That's true, but understand that homeostasis is more about operating within a given range. Generally, a narrow range, your body has a range. It's not really a set point. Everybody says, well, 98.6 is body temperature. Well, it's in that range. It's a narrow range, but generally you can think of it like kids on the teeter-totter out in the playground or something like that. It's constantly balancing itself out. So you stay within a narrow range, and you're all living organisms, and especially you, with the thousands of reactions and stuff that are going on. Everything is in constant homeostasis. Here is an example here of, you can see how calcium levels are balanced in the blood. Calcium is one of the most important ions that you can have. It's essentially in nervous system and muscular system and bone, etc., etc. You have a set range, about 10 milligrams per 100 milliliters, that needs to be in your bloodstream. And when it gets a little higher, it gets a little low, then it activates some hormonal release that causes your body to do things to bring homeostasis back. This is an example of a negative feedback mechanism, which just means as there's an opposition, whatever the body's response is in opposition to what's happening. So if blood calcium levels are rising, your body is going to react in a way to get them to lower. If then now you dip lower than where you should be on the blood calcium levels, then your body's going to respond by making it higher. Okay, that's negative feedback. That's the majority of the feedback systems in your body. There is also positive feedback, which is just saying that you have some situation in your body and your body improves or enhances. Improves is probably the wrong word, but enhances that situation to create more of it. The one great example that everybody knows about or thinks about is blood clotting. When you cut yourself, and it may sound weird, but when you cut yourself, blood rushes to the area. Well, I cut myself, I'm bleeding, I don't want blood rushing to the area. But the blood is what's carrying the immune response stuff, the macrophages that will be there, and B cells that are there to try and alleviate infection, and all the clotting factors and stuff that are going to wall off the area and keep anything, any pathogen that may have come in from invading. So it is a positive feedback mechanism because it enhances bringing blood to the system, but most of your systems are negative feedback. Drill and kill stuff, a lot of this first chapter is just basic anatomy. You should look at your book and just know the general terms: proximal distal, lateral medial, the anatomic position, anterior posterior, superior inferior, know the body plane, sagittal, mid-sagittal, horizontal, transverse, know all the 9 quadrants of the abdominal cavity where most of your vital organs are, and also, of course, while this picture and list doesn't have them all in there, what's in what quadrant. That stuff is drill and kill. We don't need to have a big lecture on what it means. You can read what it means. It's very straightforward. Okay, and that's the same with medical terminology and some of the stuff we've worked on in class. That's just something that the more I do, the better I get. Okay. Last couple things to talk about: body cavities and the membranes that there are. Of course, you have a bunch of internal organs, the viscera that are housed in cavities, and it's not really good that as you move and do the things that you do on a daily basis to survive, that they would all just be thrown in there in a jumble playing bumper boats against each other all the time. So example here is the heart surrounded by its serous membrane. Now, a serous membrane is a continuous membranous tissue. Okay, so this is continuous, and this is the age-old example of putting your hand in a somewhat inflated balloon, and what you can see then is the membrane starts wrapping around your hand. Okay, and then when it's done wrapping around your hand, it doubles back around. Okay, so it's a single connection, and then in between is serous fluid. Okay, and what happens here then is the internal, what's known as the visceral membrane, because it's attached to the viscera, is there to protect the organ itself and attach to the organ, so that the rest of the membrane, the parietal outside layer, this is attaching to the body cavity to anchor it in place, so it's not bouncing all around. In between the two layers, you need some serous fluid, a little bit of fluid to reduce friction and give it a little hydraulic cushioning, a little liquid cushion, because you still move and can start and stop rapidly, etc. It's when for some reason you may not be producing that fluid that you can have some painful moments as those membranes rub together. Okay, And we said those are the viscera. Those are all the things that are organs that are internal in the body cavities. So again, another thing to just go and drill and kill are the body cavities. Not just the basic dorsal and ventral, but where's pericardial, where's pleural, where's abdominal pelvic, what things are in those, and understanding then that those serous membranes are there to both line the cavity and then surround the organ that is there. So there's your Anatomy Basics 101, understanding membranes, cavities, terminology, stuff that really you just need to go drill. That's memorization stuff. It's not a lot of physiology there. So drill it, kill it, and scholar up Eastview.